Welcome to Residential Tech Talks. I'm Jeremy Glowacki, Executive Editor of Residential Tech Today. On this week's podcast, my guest is Frank Stearns, a longtime friend and one of my favorite people in the home tech industry. Frank was recently appointed president of the Polk Audio and Definitive Technology brands at Sound United. Frank's impressive career includes a 6-year stint at Sony, 18 years at Niles Audio, and 6 years with Harman's Infinity Systems. The last time we saw each other in person was at a conference in Las Vegas right at the start of the global pandemic. That was also just after Frank had accepted his initial role at Sound United, so we have a lot to catch up on and always a little reminiscing. Frank, great to see you, and I think it's much better, safer conditions than last time for sure.
Hey, Jeremy, great to see you as well.
Well, I wanted to start off with a little reminiscing. I can say with a lot of certainty that two of my favorite sushi dining experiences were with you. One after a little break at a CDM management conference where you and Mike Detmer back at Niles times, we found just a tiny hole in the wall in California, Long Beach maybe area.
Yeah.
I had
Beach. Yeah.
Yeah. And I had deep fried shrimp heads for the first time, which I'm up for anything at a sushi restaurant, but that was a great one. And another was the famous sushi restaurant down in South Beach. It was the chain, and I'm now drawing Nobu,
Yeah,
of course.
Nobu.
Yes, that was quite a treat. My only Nobu experience. So what a great time that was. But I always think of you when I think of sushi, and same with Mike, our friend Sparky, and also you had a very important role in my transition from New York City to Carmel, Indiana. You were in town with, I believe, with Mike, introducing Niles Audio's first home theater speaker line, Stagefront.
Yeah.
And there were these massive, awesome speakers that we sat in a conference room in a hotel near my office in New York. And you told me about them. I don't think that was there an audio demo? I think there must have been.
We did an audio demo.
Yes.
In fact, we did it in the same room that the Beatles did their famous press conference in 1963 or 64 when they came to America.
Wow, that's awesome. I did not remember that part of the anecdote, but that's a really cool place to be. So those speakers, super impressive. Hard to really turn them up and experience them, in a hotel setting. But at the end of the conversation, I said, and I was starting to do this, I was starting to put out feelers, telling people I'm moving away from the city, my first house, and I need to start putting together some equipment, and I would love to have a home theater. And you and Mike were just so generous. And I don't remember if it was immediately or he kind of got in touch with me later and said, if you can get these speakers back to your office or whatever, it'll save us shipping them home. We're done with our tour and you can have them for your house. And I still have those speakers in my home theater.
Fantastic.
And they still sound great. I did kill the sub, which sucks because it was a great sub. I had a flood in the basement and it was on the floor and I didn't get it cleared in time. It's still serving as a coffee table, not a coffee table, but an end table because it's so massive.
Oh, well,
but the rest of the system sounds great. And I thank you to this day for that, for giving me a head start on putting together a theater. So not a question, but more of just our personal history kind of story there.
That's fantastic. It's I'm reminiscing. It's great. And no, fantastic.
Well, and not to go too deep into the nostalgia, but also another great memory, Vancouver Islands.
Yeah, Sonora Resort.
Yes, Niles Audio Advisory Board trip, top dealers, 2007. I know that because I still have the little crystal trophy that you gave out to all attendees, including the press. Always felt kind of sheepish about it because I wasn't a dealer advisory board member, but I was an honorary participant there at the event. And I felt bad tossing this thing. I've held on to it since 2007, and now I just put it in my trophies, like random things, and it's there to remind me when that was. And it was a great place, beautiful location.
One of my favorite places, actually. Yeah, I just love that place. Can't wait till we can travel again. I can go back there.
No kidding. Exactly. Well, it's great to catch up on your new adventure here. We've kept in touch over the years, obviously back long stretch there with Niles, including you taking over the leadership there of the company for quite a while, and on to Sony. And now you've got this new role with Polk and DefTech. It's been about a year since you joined the company, but you weren't originally tasked with being president of those brands. Um, it's probably a quick learning curve for you. What's the process been initially? Your role was president of commercial operations for the Americas, or senior
Well,
vice president, right?
yeah, I joined Sound United at CES last year as Senior Vice President of Commercial Operations, Sales, Pricing, that sort of thing, for the Americas, Canada, US, Latin America, for all the brands. And not long after I joined, the merger talks with Bowers and Wilkins started to progress. And we were already discussing as a leadership team the fact that we had many brands going through a single team of people. And we had product people that were doing product categories as opposed to brands. And we were concerned that the brands would start to get homogenized and lose their brand essence and lose their unique positioning in the marketplace. And then when the Bowers deal looked like it was really going to go through, and we were faced with the prospect of adding another iconic large brand on top of this, we decided we really needed to reorganize the company into a brand-led approach as opposed to a regions-led approach.
Okay.
And so we started to talk about what that would look like, and determined that each brand should have a brand president responsible for the strategy, product roadmap, and global marketing, and then execute and implement on a regional basis. We have three regions: Americas, Asia Pacific, and Europe, Africa, Middle East. And like I said, I was in charge of the Americas for all brands. But once the Bowers deal closed, we started to move to brand led. And given my love for the speaker business and my experience in speakers, that's really my first passion. It just seemed a natural for me to move across and take the leadership position for these brands. And actually, it's two brands, as you mentioned. It's Polk Audio and Definitive Technology, both large specialty premium brands, but with different positioning in the marketplace and different global footprints. So for me, it's like the best of both worlds, because I get to play across the global speaker business from soundbar up to reference quality. So I'm absolutely thrilled.
Yeah, now those both have the lineage of the famous or respected speaker designer Sandy Gross being connected to those two brands specifically. Of course, he went on to create Golden Ear as well before he sold that as well. But how much of the legacy of those two brands, and of course you've got Matthew Polk and George Klopfer and Don, I don't know John's last name's pronunciation, Javogue, and Ed Blaze, all these pretty well-known, if you're into the speaker designer world, well-known individuals. So how much of that heritage do you need to kind of understand and respect? And obviously a lot of new technologies coming along in the audio space and speakers, but did you have to do a little homework on that, or did you already kind of know who those guys were?
I didn't really have to do any homework on that, because I've been in the speaker business so long. And, back when I was at Infinity, Sandy and I would be at the same events. And then when I was at Niles, Sandy and I would be at the same events. So we know each other. I know Matt and George as well. So there's not that much for me to do to understand the heritage of the brands. Frankly, I understand it quite well, even though I haven't been at Sound United very long. I've been in the industry and I've been associated with the same people. So that part's not very hard for me. The thing that is not difficult, but maybe different is the brands have evolved since Sandy left and become known for certain things. Polk has a huge soundbar business. Definitive has a huge home theater business. So the idea is to build upon that globally, keep the brands not in their lanes, but respecting of their heritage and optimized for what they are, and grow them together across the spectrum. That's what I'm trying to do.
So you mentioned the difference or the main focus areas, and of course, Definitive Technology also has sound bars, so they're not exclusive to home theater or a little high end. But are you also looking at retail versus custom integration channel? Looks like Polk typically is a more well-known retail brand where you could go to a big box store and find Polk typically, especially in the soundbar area. I wouldn't necessarily find Definitive Technology at a mass market or a big box store unless I'm missing them. Is that also a difference between those two?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Polk plays in the, let's call it mass premium up through premium into specialty channels. It has a huge soundbar business. It has a very large architectural and outdoor speaker business, but it is sold through more mass channels, more Amazon, that sort of thing. Definitive is not sold in mass channels. It starts at higher price points. It has a reasonably large soundbar business, but it doesn't have an entry-level soundbar business, and it won't have an entry-level soundbar business. It's more about premium, enthusiast, luxury, performance, and Polk is about performance and value and to be accessible. So the brands have different DNAs, different marketing strategies, different positionings in the marketplace, different product strategies, but what they share is a commitment to making the best possible sound at not low prices, but to offer value. And that, I think, is true to Sandy's legacy, because that's been a big part of what Sandy started is great sound that's also great value.
Okay. And is the manufacturing still out of the Baltimore area for those two brands?
So we have an office in Baltimore that does the engineering.
Right, engineering.
Most of the manufacturing is not in Baltimore. There may be some modifications or custom small run things, but the manufacturing is generally done in Asia or Malaysia. But the engineering and the design work and product concepts, voicing and tuning and prototypes are still done out of Baltimore.
Yeah, and I misspoke when I said that. I realized that quote unquote manufacturing is a different part of the process, but that a lot of the creative team and development team is what I was asking about. So I've been to that facility, the original facility there. The rest of the company, Sound United, you are spread out in different facilities. So it's not like you just have these different brands and they all have to just end up in one location and overlapping teams of people. You still have these independent groups developing products that are maybe sharing some, properties, but not.
Sound United is truly a global operation. It's approaching $1 billion in scale. 1,700 employees spread out. I don't know that I have this number correct, but I think it's 37 facilities around the world.
Wow. Okay.
It's become quite the large operation and truly global.
Right. So I know you're just getting your feet on the ground there with the company in a year, but the experience you brought over from your last two stops, obviously, 18 years with Niles, got to be just an amazing amount of experience there, and including running the company there toward the end. And then most recently, Sony, where you didn't just work on video products, but also the audio and a lot of high res stuff. What those two more recent experiences, what would you say some of the lessons that you maybe can carry over into your new role have been?
Well, there's always been some things about me and about my career and things that I believe in that I try to uphold no matter what I'm doing. And that is, honesty, integrity, clear communications, be a straight shooter, appreciate the relationships, understand what's important to not just me or my company, but to the customers as well, and work really hard to deliver. I don't want it to sound cliche, but wins.
Hmm.
Sometimes you might have to deliver some bad news, but if you deliver it, straight and with integrity, I think everything works out fine. Making money for customers important. Delivering a quality product. Not taking advantage of people. All those
Right.
things are just kind of block and tackle values for me, and I found that if I stick to the values and I don't, I treat people with respect and with those values in mind, things work out. And it's just who I am and the way that I've chosen to operate my life and my career, and it's worked out, really well. So try to do that every day.
Well, I think you brought a great trait to the role at Sony, because you were the conduit from this dealer base of custom integration to a major company like Sony. You gave it more of an independent feel as opposed to this big corporate entity that maybe some of these business owners didn't have access to previously or had a hard time with because of the line of communication. So you were this person that they knew, and it seemed like grounded and available. And maybe you had to deal with supply chain stuff because the custom integration channel is just one part of many outlets that Sony deals with.
Yeah.
But it seemed like you really established that role very well. And then you also, with the Niles, very much an independently owned mom and pop type of audio company. Seems like Sound United's almost kind of in between the two, because the brands still seem very accessible, but it's getting to be a global company, and
Yeah.
not necessarily a Sony, but it's nice to be able to have a familiar face locally, to the individual companies that you communicate with. But seems like that's probably a good blend of experiences for you.
Well, at Sony, I joined the company. I was asked to join the company by Neil Manowitz, who recently was announced, I think yesterday, as the new president and COO for Sony North America. And Neil and Sony had actually been customers of mine at Niles. When Sony was doing CI racks, Niles was supplying the amplifiers and IR products for those racks.
Really?
And Neil
Okay.
and I got to know each other. And, after I had left Niles and Nortec and moved back to California, Neil saw that I was in Southern California, and he said, "Would you come help us? We're in a position at Sony where we really want to reinvent our brand. We want to get back to our roots of AV specialty and premium, and we have 4K coming out and high-res audio coming out, and we really need to lean into the CI and specialty channels." And I said, "Yeah, I can do that if you'll let me do that." And he and Mike Fasulo, who was the president at the time, um, they were really supportive, and they said, yeah, this is important. And they let me do it. I wrote a business plan, and they said, yep, you go do it, which was fantastic because, it's unusual for a company the size of Sony to really let someone come in and act like an entrepreneur
Mm.
and make changes. And so I'm so grateful that they kind of let me do what they hired me to do. And then we just went and did it. And, it worked out fantastic. So I'm very proud of what we accomplished.
Well, Frank and I will continue our conversation, but first a short break.
This episode of Residential Tech Talks is brought to you by Ring, home security systems and smart home automation. Get protection at every corner with their intelligent security cameras, alarm systems, and video doorbells. Receive notifications when motion is detected or check on your home anytime with Live View in the Ring app. Help keep your neighborhood safer with the Neighbors app to share information and discuss safety concerns in this hyper-local social networking platform. Ring's mission is simple: make neighborhoods safer. Discover all the smart home security products by Ring. Go to ring.com.
Welcome back. I'm talking with Frank Stearns, president of Sony and Niles Polk Audio and Definitive Technology brands. Frank, we were talking about your experience at Sony. I wanted to go back even much further and talk about how you ended up in the audio business to start with, and even got interested in those early days of your childhood. Looks like, as many folks in the industry have been, you're a musician to start with, a bass player. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, it probably starts younger than that.
Yeah.
I was 4 or 5 years old, and I recall, and it's just vivid, going to a party with some friends of my parents, and someone put Meet the Beatles on the little console stereo, with the turntables and the built-in speakers, and all my lovin'. And I was hooked, and I wanted to be Paul McCartney. I wanted to be a rock star, and I was 4 or 5 years old. By 10, I'd gotten a guitar for my birthday and taught myself how to play some chords. Okay. And then graduate to junior high school, and I wanted to study guitar, but I had band or orchestra. Those were my choices. And I didn't want to play the trumpet. And the orchestra didn't have any guitars, but they said violin, viola, cello, or bass. And I said, bass? And so I learned how to play classical stand-up bass at 13 years old, and it turns out I was pretty good at it.
Okay.
In fact, I was invited to an all-star orchestra for the Los Angeles City School District. I was the youngest bass player in the orchestra. Wow. When I was 13 or 14 years old. And I was really thinking maybe I would become a professional musician, but then I got a little bit older and realized a classical bass player, you weren't going to meet any girls. And anyhow, I decided not to become a musician.
You didn't consider a rockabilly band at any point in time?
I had a band in high school, but I couldn't sing, and I really wasn't that good at guitar. And I started to think about it, and I said, maybe I got into audio at about the same time I got into playing the bass. One of my fellow bass players had a next door neighbor that worked for Infinity Speakers. And so he and I learned all about Infinity. This was in the early 70s when Arnie and Carrie were making servo statics and other things. And we became Infinity groupies and hi-fi fanatics when I was 14 or 15. In fact, I mowed lawns for a summer so I could buy my first pair of Infinity Column 1 speakers. And I actually rode my bicycle down to the Infinity factory because it was a few miles from my house, and applied for a summer job on the production line.
Okay.
But I didn't get the job. So fast forward a few years later, and I met someone, actually a customer of my father's, that was the Western advertising sales manager for Stereo Review. And she and I became good friends, and she helped me write my resume and helped me get launched in my career. uh, which was actually in electronics with David Hafler. But long story short, she and I connected a few years later, and she had been dating Arnie Nudell. And she connected me with Arnie, and I ended up getting hired at Infinity. And I told Arnie about how he didn't hire me when I was 15, and I still kind of resented that. And I think that's what got me the job.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And so, yeah, I ended up being the national sales manager for premium audio at Infinity in 1986, and then became the national sales manager for everything for Infinity Harman in 88 through 92.
Okay.
And yeah.
And you worked with Mike Detmer there before you went to Niles together, correct?
When I left being the high-end sales manager to be the sales manager of everything, all channels, all products, I needed to replace myself as high-end sales manager.
Okay.
So I hired Mike to become the high-end sales manager and replace me. And that was not 1988.
Okay. And you were there for a while. And what was the move? Because you ended up in Florida for Niles. So how
Yeah.
do you make that big leap?
So this is an interesting story. You want to talk about connecting the dots. So this was 19, I guess it was probably 90 or 91. And CEDIA was being formed.
Mm-hmm.
And I was launching a line of in-wall speakers, the ERS, Environmental Reference Standard, one of the early in-wall speakers for Infinity. And we were charter founding members of CEDIA. And about that time, Denon introduced the world's first 5-channel receiver. And I started to think, where do you put the center speaker? So I wrote a product specification brief for a center channel speaker that would sit on top of a television that had magnetic shielding to put the center channel. And that became Infinity's Video One, which became the first center channel speaker, and at that time was the biggest selling single speaker SKU in their history.
Mm.
But it became pretty clear to me with multi-channel sound and big wooden boxes of speakers that likely people were going to run out of room to put speakers, and this trend towards in-wall speakers was likely something that was here to stay.
Okay.
And soon after that, in fact, the first CEDIA Expo in Amelia Island, Florida, I met Ivan Zuckerman, Ivan Niles Zuckerman, the founder of Niles. And he and I just connected, and we talked over the coming year. And I decided to go help Ivan out with Niles. I thought he was in the right place at the right time, and with what I knew about speakers and his switch boxes and volume controls and knowledge of install, that this could be a really great thing for everybody. So I took a bit of a leap and joined Ivan at Niles. And the first year I actually worked out of my house in Los Angeles.
Okay.
Because I didn't really want to move. And things took off pretty quickly. And Ivan said, you know, you need to come to Florida. You need to be here. And so, yeah, I moved back to Florida actually, and was there for almost the next 20 years. And it was quite the ride.
Absolutely. And here I just thought you only worked for places that were in warm climates this whole time. But it just happened to work out that way.
It just worked out that way.
So, you know, we will get into, I want to ask you about your observations on trends in the AV business, but some of the things I wanted to touch on too were just your interests other than music and performance there in the early years, but you've got a passion for cooking and cycling. Yeah. The one thing I really enjoyed when you, I think initially left Niles before you went to Sony, was you had this little, was it a vanity label type of an opportunity with winemaking? Can you recall that experience?
Yeah, no, of course. I got into wine, you know, food and wine and stereos and bicycles and guitars, and, you know, those are the things that I'm into. And early on, in fact, 1988 in Infinity, we had a customer on the West Coast called the Good Guys.
Yeah.
And we had a dinner for the Good Guys at the French Laundry in Napa.
I know that place. I went there from my first anniversary. That's a great restaurant.
And in fact, Mike Mohan, who's now the president of Best Buy, was there because he was at the Good Guys at the time. And, long story short, I fell in love with Napa Valley
Mm-hmm.
and wine, and it just fit my whole personality. And so I said, at some point when I'm successful in my career, I'm going to have a second career. And I'm going to have a winery and a tasting room and release parties and yellow labs running around in bocce ball courts and all that sort of stuff. And I had this big dream. And when we sold Niles to Nortec, I did pretty well. And I decided to dip my toe in the water to see if that dream was real. And so I called some friends in Napa. And I hired a winemaker, and I contracted with some growers, and I bought grapes, and I bought barrels, and I got a winery to actually produce the wine to my specifications, and I designed a label, and I launched this wine brand called Ariel. And my plan was, I was still working for Niles. I was still president of Niles. I was going to build a mailing list clientele. And I was going to sell it to Detmer, and we could take it to dinners and give it away to customers. So I kind of had a built-in sales base, if you will, while I built this brand.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO of Nortec at the time, Richard Brady, was also a wine lover and owned an interest in 5 restaurants in Providence, Rhode Island. And so he was completely supportive. So I launched this brand. Unbeknownst to me, when I started in 2006, the stock market corrected in 2008. Nortec got in financial trouble. There wasn't much expense account or wining and dining of customers at all. And to make a long story short, Nortec ended up going through a bankruptcy and a reorg and smashing brands together, which became core brands. And I ended up leaving. And so the wine thing kind of came to an end due to circumstances. I guess if times had been different, our conversation now might be about the new Chardonnay release. I don't know. But,
Are you, do you still have dreams of doing that as a retirement job after audio, or are you kind of over it now?
No, I think what I've learned sometimes is that hobbies are better as hobbies, and
yeah,
business is better as business.
Sure.
For a few years, it took a little bit of the enjoyment out of collecting wine, drinking wine, researching wine, buying wine. It became a job. So I'm really glad I did it. I'm really proud of the wine. It was rated the #1 Cabernet in California in 2008, which for a newcomer is pretty good.
Yeah.
But commercially, not so much of a success. But I'm still proud of it.
Well, there was a lot more to that story than I recalled, so that was really cool that you went that deep into it. It's nice that you got a little chance to try it out, but I'm happy that you're still a part of this business because I get to talk to you about audio stuff, which means I need to ask you the final question, which is, what are the trends in the AV business? I'll ask generally because it's more than just audio, that are influencing some of your product development efforts right now?
Yeah, great question. These are really interesting times, as everybody knows. Personally, I've been at home for a year now, staring at Zoom calls and that sort of thing. Totally different than anything else. I'm sure same for you.
Yeah.
I used to travel every other week and go visit customers, and we don't do that anymore. But it's a bad thing for people, and it's a challenging thing for everybody to stay safe and healthy. It's been perversely a good thing for our business, and there's a number of factors that have come together. It's kind of the perfect storm. So number one, people at home, COVID, shelter in place, got to come up with things to do, to stay sane. And that has meant home improvement, improve your audio system, get a new television, fix the backyard, get a new home office setup, upgrade your network, get a new desk chair. So demand in general, I think the numbers I saw were overall in CI last year up 11%. We are up substantially more than that.
Great.
At the same time, you have big changes in things like content that's available for streaming. So this was a trend that was coming even before COVID, cord cutting and over the top, but you've got Netflix and HBO Max and Discovery Plus and Disney Plus and Roku and all these streaming services. And now with COVID, people are at home, and so they're not going to the movies, but first run movies are being released in home.
Right.
So that's a demand generator in and of itself. On top of that, you've got a flight to quality. You've got enhanced download speeds, enhanced networks. So you're now streaming 4K and Dolby Atmos. And then the last thing is people can't go out and travel as much or go out to eat. And so you've got discretionary income for those that are still working to invest and enjoy in all these things. So you got a lot of things happening all at the same time that are dramatically growing home entertainment, growing AVRs, growing home theater speakers, growing sound bars, growing headphones, growing outdoor sound, all of these things. And we believe these trends mostly are here to stay. Quality content, not going anywhere, just going to get better. First run movies released at home, I don't think that's going to go back. We like to think of it a lot like what happened with gaming, where you used to go to the arcade and then you started gaming at home. Well, you used to go to the movies, and I think at some point people will go back to a movie experience, but I don't think it's going to go back to movies first and home second. What will likely change is that when we all get vaccine or herd immunity, we're likely to want to go back and travel again, which may affect budgets a little bit, but I don't think it's going to affect the trends. So that is definitely influencing our current and future product directions.
Very good. Thanks, Frank. I really appreciate your time. It's been great catching up with you.
Thanks, Jeremy. Likewise. Great to see you.
Also, thanks to everybody for joining us. Be sure to share, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. And you can check out all the latest residential tech news at restechtoday.com. Until next time, please stay safe, stay inspired, and let us know if you have a great story to tell.
Residential Tech Talk, lighting specialist, residential tech